What if humanity itself is a hypothesis? What happens when fear, separation, and suffering have been tested to their limits and the universe is ready for a new experiment? Well, we're about to explore the Great Reset. That's the inflow of new consciousness and the new questions that are going to be shaping life on a cosmic scale. Welcome back to the Light Journal Podcast. I'm Jamie Perez. In part one, we proposed that the cosmos poses questions by creating. And then today we're going to ask, what kinds of questions is consciousness asking through us? How do individual lives, cultures, and entire civilizations function as experiments in meaning? And what does it look like when a long-running hypothesis comes to its conclusion? We aren't simply beings moving through time and space, but ideas given flesh, concepts being clothed in matter. Imagine your very existence as an experiment designed to test the boundaries of meaning, choice, and possibility. Each lifetime is a laboratory where we are living out a hypothesis rather than merely thinking it through. This episode was actually stimulated by something Spirit shared with me when I was outside walking my dog. I asked, if you take away all my preconceptions and ego and body and whatnot, what am I actually? And Spirit told me immediately, without even a second's break, that I'm an idea. Well, I didn't know what to do with that. But as I kept thinking about it, I decided I needed to ask more questions from Spirit, so I did. And the more questions I asked, the more surprising answers that I got. For one thing, I was told that the reason we all feel like we came here for a purpose is because we did. Each of us here came to embody and answer a question, or maybe many questions. And until that question is fully lived and answered through our experiences, we're going to stay. Now, if we don't manage to get to the answer in this life, well, we just return again and again and again until that initial inquiry is answered. Our purpose is not fulfilled until the question that we came to embody has been fully expressed and resolved. But that isn't all the Spirit had to say on that issue. Today, when I was out walking, I was given additional information. Spirit explained to me through actually an example that humans find a lot of joy through the process of discovering. And that mirrors what's happening on a cosmic level. I mean, just think about it. Imagine you're the perfect spiritual being and you have full, immediate access to all knowledge. Where's the thrill of learning? And how are you supposed to get that thrill of learning? Well, the only answer is through incarnation. The very act of being limited and not knowing, that creates a space where discovery is possible. And it creates a space where the joy and pleasure that comes from discovery is possible. Yeah, in our lives, we may see these discoveries as just a small thrill, kind of like when you identify a bird's call or realize a hidden pattern or learn a new skill. But those moments are important. Recently, while I was walking my dog, I heard a squeaking sound in the trees that I've heard it numerous times before, and I knew it had to be a bird, but I had no clue what kind of bird it was. So today when I heard it, I thought, I know what I'm going to do. I want to look it up. So I grabbed my phone and I researched the question because it's a very distinctive sound. It sounds kind of like a creaking tree or a creaking door. So when I looked it up, I used those words and it came right back. It's a barn owl. So I just got this thrill out of it. It's like, now I know when I hear that squeaking sound, what I'm listening to are barn owls out in the woods. And I know that sounds trivial in one sense, but when you think about it, life is full of those small, seemingly inconsequential discoveries, but they add up, layer upon layer. It's how we learn about ourselves. It's how we learn what lifts us up, what takes us down. It's how we learn to survive, how to play, and how to love. All these tiny nuggets of learning, of experiences, and of discoveries, well, they accumulate over our lifetime, making us who we are. Our knowledge and skills develop through every discovery, and every discovery, no matter how small, affects our perspective of the world and of our life and of ourselves. I believe that's what makes every human life a potent experiment. We, as divine beings in the flesh, have to flounder through life to find the answers. And because the answers, they're not instantaneous and they're not easy. It requires effort and many times determination to overcome obstacles and challenges, which sometimes include mental, emotional, physical, psychological, and other forms of damage. So every limit, every lack, every trial, it gives us this exquisite opportunity and pleasure of figuring things out. Put plainly, without us and other forms of sentient life, the divine only knows itself as everything. There's no growth when you're already everything. Growth requires being less than or unequal to something else. So it's only by fragmenting itself that the source has created the conditions for curiosity to flourish. And curiosity is the engine of evolution for consciousness. That insight helped me to realize something. If I am an idea, then so is everybody else. And if we're all ideas, then we're also expressions of the great cosmic mind, of the source that is dreaming us into being. We're not random accidents. We are the questions themselves made visible in time and space. So envision your higher self not as a separate being, but as the infinite, still ocean of the consciousness. Your current awareness is like a single wave that rises up in the ocean. It's distinct for a time. It explores its unique motion and its perspective, right? And it's never separate from source. It carries the power and the depth of the entire ocean, and eventually it dissolves back into the ocean. That's what the higher self is like. It's the out-breath of a still greater self, spiraling back through endless layers of inquiry in a cosmic fractal. Every choice, every triumph, every heartbreak becomes data that travels back through this line of inquiry, eventually returning to the original source and to answering that first primal question, am I enough? Because that question is too vast for a single life, consciousness subdivides it into smaller and more specific inquiries. These questions become the themes of our existence. These are the reoccurring patterns and lessons that shape our lives. Each of us carries a unique constellation of questions and paradoxes that we're here to solve. By living and wrestling with them, we're participating in the universe's deepest act of creation, consciousness learning itself. This leads me to the heart of the soul's journey, repeated incarnations. One test run is rarely enough to fully explore a hypothesis. To answer the questions posed by our theme, We have to test them from countless different angles and perspectives until there are no more loose ends that we haven't explored. Our incarnations aren't random. Each one is part of that ongoing experiment designed around the central theme. For example, your theme might be the nature of power. So then what would be the hypothesis? Something like, what happens when I'm powerless? Or what happens when I hold immense power? Over thousands of lifetimes, we could incarnate as every possible human expression. We could test it based on our culture, our environment, our race, sex, gender, religion, power, era. There's just innumerable ways that we can explore those questions and a multitude of others that are related to the questions of power. Your life is less of a script and more of a research design. The higher self proposes a hypothesis, and then you, the incarnate expression, becomes both the test subject and the test itself. Every decision becomes a data point. Success or failure really isn't the point, because it's more about exploration. Because the point of a hypothesis isn't to prove the answer right, but to uncover what the answer truly is. Only the accumulation of countless trials can bring clarity to the hypothesis that the soul is investigating. The purpose of our grand cycle, this grand theme, is to complete the question from every angle. So when the hypothesis has been tested from every conceivable viewpoint or angle, the soul has enough data to say it has resolved the theme. The experiment's complete. So then the soul can design a new hypothesis, perhaps on a different plane of existence, or maybe it dissolves back into the boundless field of possibility and energy. Maybe the Ein Sof, the Tao, the quantum field, and back into the source of the question itself. This personal journey mirrors a much larger cosmic cycle. Science tells us that the universe is expanding outward from a single point in the Big Bang. From the perspective of the Great Experiment, this is the outward expansion of a hypothesis, but on a universal scale. Every burst of energy, every form of life is a trial run, a data point in consciousness's ongoing inquiry. The universe just keeps stretching wider and wider because each answer generates more questions. Yet, expansion is only half of the story. Both modern science and ancient traditions suggest that the universe isn't going to expand forever. Some cosmologists have a name for it. They call it the Big Crunch. This is where gravity eventually pulls everything back into the singularity. Others propose something called the Big Bounce, which is an endless rhythm of expansion and then contraction. You can find this same thinking pattern in cosmologies such as, for example, Hinduism. They talk about the yugas, which are vast epochs in which the universe rises, flourishes, declines, and then dissolves. In the Kali Yuga, which is the final age, truth and morality decay until the cosmos itself undergoes purification, and then it collapses into the Brahman, who is considered to be the one consciousness. And just like in science, when an experiment is concluded, well, it often sparks another experiment, another question, because the cycle just never stops. So then out of the void, out of this singularity, a new question emerges. And so it's the one breathing out again, and it breathes out a new hypothesis. So then expansion starts it again. Stars ignite, galaxies swirl, souls incarnate, and consciousness embarks on its next great round of discovery. Much of humanity at this point has been feeling like we're in a time of great change and chaos. So much suffering and uncertainty is happening. But from a cosmic perspective, This turbulence isn't random. It's the conclusion of a long-running hypothesis. What happens when a sentient being lives in fear and separation? Well, for millennia, humanity has tested every variable of this question through wars and conquest, greed and exploitation, injustice and oppression. Every cultural epoch, every empire, every ideology has just been another trial of the experiment. Well, now the data's in. We know in our very bones the outcome of living in a feeling of separation and fear. This hypothesis has been thoroughly explored. This idea is echoed in wisdom traditions across the globe. The Hopi people teach that we are in the fourth world, each of the previous worlds ending in some kind of cataclysm, fire, ice, flood, brought on by humanity's imbalance and disregard for sacred law. According to the Hopi, this current age is going to end in another collapse that's brought on by greed, technological hubris, and only a remnant is going to survive to carry the seed of humanity into a fifth world. In Hindu cosmology, this moment corresponds to the Kali Yuga, the darkest age, where dharma erodes and suffering proliferates. Yet it also sets the stage for the cycle's renewal. According to Buddhism, this era is a collective dukkha, the confrontation with suffering that precedes awakening. And in shamanic traditions, collapse is seen as initiation, the death of the old so that the new can emerge. We are all participants in this reset. Humanity is contracting. It's shedding the exhausted hypothesis of fear and separation. Our world and its institutions are undergoing profound disillusion. This isn't destruction. The chaos we're listening is the friction of an experiment ending. On a planetary scale, humanity is wrestling with its most pressing experiment. According to the World Economic Forum reports, economic inequality is at an all-time high, with the wealthiest 1% of the global population holding more than half of the world's wealth. Climate change is displacing millions, and with the number of people forcibly displaced worldwide reaching over 114 million in 2023. These aren't isolated challenges. They are data points in a planetary scale trial. The Earth itself is the laboratory, and we are living out the hypothesis of interdependence. This experiment with separation isn't just playing out on an individual level. It's woven into the fabric of our communities and our nations. Just as the soul embodies a hypothesis, entire civilizations carry their own questions to the very edge of possibility. What happens when freedom is the highest law? What happens when control is? What happens when wealth, equality, or faith forms the center of a people's identity? If we look outward, this pattern is likely repeating across the cosmos. Entire star systems could be laboratory of consciousness testing one thing or another. For example, questions like, what happens if life flourishes here but not there? What happens if civilizations evolve side by side or in isolation? Just as your life is the experiment of your higher self, humanity is the experiment of Earth, and the Earth is the experiment of the cosmos. Provided that consciousness has finished its exploration of this research project, of this paradigm, that means it's time for a new experiment or a new question to emerge. To do that, new people are being brought into the world. They're being brought into the experiment to help us move beyond this lower vibrational paradigm of fear and separation. You can think of it like a scientist who's observing a petri dish. The experiment's complete. It's taught the scientist everything that he or she needs to know. So now it's time to initiate a new phase. The scientist introduces a new substance into the petri dish, an inoculant. That inoculant are the new ideas and people that Dolores Cannon has called the 3 waves of volunteers. These are souls who've come into this world not to rerun the old cycles of karma, fear, separation, but to bring in the higher frequency codes of compassion, creativity, and unity. According to Paul Selig's guides, we are all participants in this great wave where consciousness itself is recalibrating human frequency so that it rises to a higher octave. And these new people that have come in are here to introduce a new vibrational frequency, which involves a new way of thinking and a new way of being. These are people that are seeding a new level, a new understanding of compassion, that are creating the blueprints for sustainable living, who are shouting out the need and opportunity for unity. These people are all challenging the old systems by simply offering up a new way to live, one that's no longer rooted in fear and separation. Now, this influx of new people creates a subtle energetic friction that accelerates the contraction of the old. It's the universe's way of providing a gentle but firm nudge. These new souls may seem out of place to many of us, with their different ways of thinking about gender, community, technology, spirituality, but they are here to model a new path and to remind us of a forgotten truth, that we are not separate, that we do not need to live in fear. So if you're ever wondering why there's so much cultural and generational divide, this actually explains a lot of that. It's a clash of paradigms. The old souls are experiencing the culmination of this experiment, of their inquiry into separation and fear. The new souls that are coming in are arriving as a direct response to the call to reset, and they hold the energy and ideas of a new age. Their very presence is the inoculant. They are transforming the petri dish from within and making the next hypothesis possible, which is a civilization built on interconnection without the feelings of fear and separation that have ruled humanity for far too long. You and I aren't here by accident. We are part of a living experiment of consciousness, part of a vast, ongoing hypothesis. Every choice, every relationship, every challenge is data in this great inquiry. And as humanity moves into the next phase, the universe is asking, what happens when we live from love, unity, and shared purpose? Your life, your awareness, and your actions are the answer. They help shape the questions of the next experiment. Thank you so much for joining me on the Light Journal podcast. I'm Jamie Perez. If this episode spoke to you, please like, subscribe, hit the bell, and share your reflections in the comments. Blessings on your journey, everyone.